very first session of the day featuring none other than Axiata, one of Malaysia's most preferred employers. We have a very diverse panel here, which is, of course, in line with the topic of the day, walking the talk on diversity, equity, and inclusion, featuring Norlida Azmi, Group Chief People Officer at Axiata, Ang Yu Zhen from Axiata's 11th batch of the graduate program, and Hani, also from the 11th batch of the Axiata graduate program. Today's session will be moderated by Adam Azhar, Brand and Comms Lead of the Axiata Young Talent Program. Throughout this session, we urge all our viewers to send in your questions and comments to the panel and have them answer it live here only on Grado and Aspire. You also stand a chance to win Shopee vouchers for the top 5 best comments or questions. You can keep up to date with the latest happenings in the Grado universe by following us on social media at Grado. So without further ado, I'll be passing the virtual floor to our moderator of the day. Adam, it's all yours.
Cool. Thanks very much, Rafi. Yeah, so Shopee vouchers, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, just remember to ask questions and maybe you might get one of those Shopee vouchers. Again, thanks very much, Rafi. My name is Adam Azhar. I am the Brand and Communications Lead here at Axiata Group Berhad, specifically for the Axiata Young Talent Program. And today's webinar with us, we would be talking about, well, the topic is walking the talk when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And again, with us today, we have Norlida Azmi, our Group Chief People Officer here at Axiata Group Berhad. Norlida, nice to have you with us. We also have 2 of our Axiata graduate trainees from this year's intake, batch 11. There's Eugen and Hani. So they would be coming in more so from the perspective of diversity, equity, and inclusion from a younger generation's perspective. Yeah, we wanted to have that. We wanted to make sure that there is also diversity in terms of perspective, generational wise. Yep, so there's that. To kick it off, basically, we all know that the workplace is changing in profound ways, from the way we communicate to corporate culture and how we do our jobs on a daily basis. And the pace of change that's been taking place, at least in the past year with the global pandemic, it's been quite mind-boggling, quite dizzying. And it doesn't seem like it would be slowing down anytime soon. And it's easy now to see why it's really important for companies to continue innovating their diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And in fact, when it comes to, a study by the International Labour Organization has also stated that companies with a more inclusive culture and policies see a 59% increase in innovation and 37% better assessment of consumer interest and consumer interest and demand towards that organization. But despite all of the talk, despite all of the chatter when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, very few organizations can actually say that they are truly inclusive or they truly embrace DEI. It's not that diversity. It's not that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, lacks attention, but it's lacking in terms of results. And what we're here to discuss today as a panel is more so of the why, and also to share with all of you how Axiata is looking into diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yep. So that is, I hope you guys are all cool with our opening. To kick it off, here's the first question for everyone here on the panel. First things first, how would you, in your own words, define diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace? And why is it really an important cause for us to pay attention to? Perhaps, Oli, you can kick it off.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So lovely to be here. And I think the title of this, what we wanted to represent, is really walking the talk, because you've seen a lot of literature on this. How do we bring life to something that is now has evolved to become both a social as well as a business imperative? So to me, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, I was just, when I was preparing for this conversation with you, they were talking about, in the simplest of language, what is diversity? Diversity are all the ways in which people differ. So you don't even begin with any premise of generation, gender, or anything. How do we differ in the many things? And how do we then give people in equity fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people. I love the simplicity of the intent, because then you will always go back to it, take away any politics or business drivers, yet just in the purest of all, you know. And what I love most about the statement that they've defined here as inclusion is a variety of people have power, a voice, and decision-making authority. That is really where the culmination of DEI comes about: diversity, equity and inclusion. And to me, particularly diversity is one that has gotten a lot of attention in my personal assessment. And sometimes to me, it just becomes numbers, right? You have so many women here, you have so many people in Gen Y and Gen X and the Zenders. What does it mean? So are they given the actual access and opportunity? And it really goes back to the word inclusion, inclusive leadership and managers, accountability and equality and fairness of opportunity. It doesn't mean equity, we just give everybody everything. That has a different word to it, actually. And a sense of operating in an ecosystem that has openness and as well as free from bias. That to me is what diversity, equity, and inclusion means.
Cool. Okay. From Yuzhan and Honey, what would your take on this be?
Honey, you want to go first or should I?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add to what Oli said. So thank you so much, Oli, for your definition. I think it's like it encompasses everything that DEI is about. I just want to bring like my personal perspective on it. So I feel like for diversity, equity, and inclusion, like each word represents something for me personally. So for diversity, it just means that it's a very stimulating environment because you have so many people from so many different backgrounds. And for me personally, I love learning about other people and then their cultures and with their backgrounds and their opinions. So it's very stimulating for me.
And
I think in a way, sorry. Okay,
no,
yeah. So I think both equity and inclusion. Oh no, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, yep. All right. Okay. So for equity and inclusion, I feel both words because it provides access and opportunities, and it fosters a sense of belonging to the organization. It's very pleasant and welcoming. So I think if a person feel as if they're welcome to the organization, they can definitely perform better and basically reach their highest potential. So I think I just want to bring like a more personal perspective on what DEI means to me personally. Yeah, so Yuzhan, you can chime in as well. Thank you.
Sure. Hi Oli, hi Adam, hi Hani. I think you guys have covered it pretty well. But like I think Oli as well just put everything down to the simplest language in terms of what DEI truly stands for, and that was great. But I think the sort of thing that I want to highlight is exactly what Oli said about inclusion, where diversity and equity, when it can boil down to numbers, having that culture of inclusion is the first step because you're bringing the voice of the underrepresented to the floor. And once you have that culture of inclusion, then the diversity and equity will naturally come. So I highly agree with what Oli has said with the importance of inclusion as the first step before bringing in diversity and equity. Otherwise, it'll just be policies on the paper, without proper action. So highly agree with that. And with regards to diversity, exactly with what Hadi said, I'm the sort of person that is at its best when I'm bouncing off other people's ideas and people are critiquing mine. And going back to what Adam said about ILO, I'm sure we've seen it in all universities and organizations. The more diverse a group is, the better the outcome generally is because you're bringing in different backgrounds, bringing in different experiences to really inform the final product at the end. So I think to me, that's the most important tenets of what diversity and inclusion can really bring to the table for an organization. But yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Just to I guess to add a bit of spice to the conversation, right? Okay, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's one of the hot topics right now. But at the same time, would all of you agree that okay, wanting to implement policies that address it is one thing, but making sure that the policies that that are being put in place actually are, you know, something that is of meaning and not just a, you know, us ticking the box. That, yeah, what's your take on that? Because I'm sure there are perhaps certain organizations or certain entities that would just want to, you know, do it for the sake of doing it. But if you probe as to, you know, why exactly is it so important, it's hollow. Yeah. What's your take on that?
Our take on your specific question would be, how do we give meaning to what DEI is and why we want to do it, Adam?
Yes, yeah.
If I can just chime in here, I've just, one of the organizations that I've had in the past, something that I want to bring into Axiata, maybe we can talk later, is it is so embedded in the way we do work, you know. It is in the way, if I just come from the people life cycle, right? When you go and in that organization, I have to make sure that the slate of candidates I have is diverse, because you're already managing the diversity at the intake into the organization. So it is embedded in the policy, but it is implemented and observed. And in that process as well, the panel of interviewers cannot be all one gender, because different genders, different generations, and different ethnic backgrounds are going to have different hot points, even from a business perspective. So that was in one of the intake, right? And in the talent development program, they look, what is the diversity? It's like a standard senior management dashboard coming into any meeting. Give me your diversity landscape of gender, of ethnicity, of generations, as well as abilities. Because I think these are things that we can do in Malaysia, right? And I was so proud that before I left that organization, which was a global organization, it was embedded into the performance management. Because you know, you have the tangible measures of everybody loves KPIs and scorecards in this corporate world, right? So yeah. Sometimes it's not just what you achieve, but how you achieve it, right? So in one of the behavior attributes was actually a statement that says, how much does the employee demonstrate, if he's a manager, accountability to the diversity agenda? Do they treat everybody correctly, fairly, and thing? And at the other employees, how do they then support other people, right? I thought that was quite powerful. And in that organization, we had so much simple training to remove unconscious bias. We, all the way to the CEO, we were actually trained what we call the inclusive language. How many of you actually say, good morning, guys? And think about it, what about the gals? Why is it not good morning, gals, right? And I know it's a simple thing, but you know, it's like, wow. And another one in that organization is sometimes when you're in a lift, well, all of us miss being in a lift, right? Because we're locked down. So do you go into another language that other people in the lift, if it's in an organization, feel excluded? So it may be very, has no malicious intent, but the outcome is exclusion. So you can see that organization really puts it into the daily behaviors. And I just love it. And so these are the things, you know, Adam, if you ask me, how are you going to live it? And later I'll talk about how, you know, it's just beyond the social fabric of an organization, but it will also translate into businesses because we need to have a diverse people who solution so that we can identify with all the customers' variations, as well as a leadership that's also diversified. Because we have so many of this. So there's so many ways that we can bring it to life. And some of it is very simple. And I will say that it begins with your mindset and what you really want to do.
Wow, okay, that's nicely said. And I think I myself am guilty of using "Good morning, guys." I'll be mindful of that now. Yeah, thanks though. Okay, I guess now naturally the next question would then be: all three of you have passionately explained or give an insight to all of us here as to what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to you. So I guess again the next natural question would then be: what was that profound moment for each of you, perhaps in your personal life or even in your career life mainly? Like, what was that profound moment for you that made you want to be a strong advocate for DEI? Yeah. Okay, let's pick a person. Honey, maybe do you want to go first for this one? Or you, Jen, since he went last just now?
You want to go with you said?
I don't mind anything. I think your story will probably be more interesting than mine.
Oh no, okay. Yeah, so I think this is more personal perspective because I'm still a fresh graduate and then I just joined the workforce like this year. So not really much to talk about on that front, but I think the key moment where I felt that I really wanted to be an advocate for DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion was when I was in university. So I studied in Cambridge, and that was actually my first time stepping in the UK. So I've never seen the UK. I've never traveled to the UK before. This was a totally new experience, and Cambridge is very different to Malaysia. Like I was the only person in the room wearing a hijab, which was Muslim, which was Malay and female. So I felt very alienated, and I felt very, I would say, not sad, but I felt like I didn't belong in the entire community. So it took a while to basically build relationships with other people. But I think that also experience affected my, I would say, performance in my academic performance, because I felt like, oh, because I felt other. And so I feel like I couldn't really live up to my biggest potential because I couldn't see other people like similar to myself. Everyone else was most of them were either white men. So it was just something that I felt like affected me personally. So I think going forwards and being Malaysia, I'm very thankful that Malaysia is a very multi-regional country. We're very diverse. I just realized that after going to the UK, I'm like, we are very diverse. We have amazing food. And I think we should embrace that and bring that culture to our organizations so that we can get like, we can improve our workforce in general and bring everyone together to perform like a better inclusive community.
I like how he just, like snuck in diverse food there just now. That's
the best thing. I miss going out to Mama sauce.
That is very Malaysian of it. Yeah. Thanks to Honey. Ollie, what about you?
I thought I was going to give youth before age, but I can go next. Putting youth into a spot.
We layer it.
Because I'm older, I'm going to set a little bit of a different context, and I'm going to say that for me, growing up, it was always very, the background, and it goes back to my mindset. My husband is British Brazilian, and my two sister-in-laws are Chinese, and my two son-in-laws are German and American. So that's very diverse. And growing up, I'm from Penang. Yay to all the Penangites out there. So my family lived in a Chinese village, and I grew up where my aunt and uncle would speak Hokkien and Indian. I'm like, so I'm a bit blinded to differences, because that was said to me a little bit how I see things, and being 18 years overseas, I'm also even more blinded to some of the differences. But so coming up into the working world, I like to talk about the two profound moments in both. One is a negative, but one's a positive. I had a portfolio in a big multinational organization that covered Africa. So of course you do reports and you do everything. And I thought I was pretty good at it. I heard that one of my colleagues then said, because you have to do country visits, one of my colleagues said to my boss, he says, can you imagine Ollie traipsing in Africa? And I'm thinking like, how does that affect what I deliver to the organization? And why do you think just because I like to wear 6 inches heels, which I do, that I will not be wearing, camping and walking boots? You know what I mean? So then I began to reflect like, how dare you make a judgment, an assessment without asking me? So I was a bit polite. So I did talk to my boss. So you have to confront it. So that was a little bit that I began to be conscious on a personal implication that perhaps, you think about it and says, oh, this is acceptable. It doesn't really hurt me, but it would hurt me in terms of professional growth, and it would hurt the other members that I represent. Perhaps the women in the workforce, are they subjected? So I go conscious of it, and then I read about it. So, but then from a positive reinforcement, when I was in Abu Dhabi, I was working from an Islamic bank. So then they had Emiratization program, and we have to reach the targets. And my CEO says, "Okay, Oli, we need to reach these targets." I'm like, where else am I going to find these people, right? So you see, society then takes away an available workforce, right? So I said, okay, they're well educated. So I went to see my head of the religious department. So I said, Sheikh, if I make sure that the working environment, therefore this was for the teller positions in the bank, if I make sure that I respect the religious boundaries, that means I will put a divider between the teller stations, and I make sure in front of the desk it covers, would you allow me to hire female tellers? And he did, because I am respecting the societal pressures, or rather the social norms. We can't judge how different countries want to have the workforce in place, right? But the other thing that also struck me then is the enabling process. So the minute he said, okay, yay, so I'm going to hire 100 new women tellers, right? And these were young women early from university or high schools. So we also have to enable the process. So when I had the interview, I had 3,000 of women in abayas in black. And I also had another 1,000 of the gentlemen wearing their white outfit, because you have to respect, right? They will come with their mothers, or they will come with their fathers and brothers. So as organizations, it then made me think that you have to enable not just the outcome, but the process that will bring diversity into your organization. You can't just say, for example, if I go on gender, right? I want to bring more women into the workplace. Hello, there is a process that comes before that. Do you give them equal access? And this is what we talk about: equity in action. So those were, to me, those two galvanizing points, that says, from my personal perspective and from an organization. So therefore, today, when I'm looking from where I sit, I'm like saying, I want to reach this workforce. I want to build this, our mission, right? I mean, all of you here at Axiata, we want to be the digital champions. So have we accessed all the possible avenues to bring the best of talents into our organization? So that, to me, is how I see my two galvanizing points.
I see. Okay. That's, I guess, yeah, that is a very in-depth take on the process itself. I think, yeah, that is, I think even for me listening in my head, at least, it's been a lot more about, just talking about the outcome, what we see as an outsider. But what hearing from you, what I've just realized is there's actually a lot more work that needs to be put in place in order for you to even enable certain things to actually happen. We want to support someone, yes. We can say that we want to support them, but the how to support is important, right? Yeah, that did not come across to me until you pointed it out. Thanks, Oli.
Welcome.
Eugen, on to you.
That's a tough act to follow. But actually, when Oli mentioned about the Abu Dhabi, that experience, because one of the key pertinent questions I always have is, how do you reconcile DEI and respect reconcile that with the country's social and cultural norms. So hearing how you actually worked within this context of the cultural and social norms and use that to accelerate DEI initiatives, that's something that I find really interesting. And using that as an enabling process was fascinating to hear about. Talking about sort of my profound moment, of course, I had a really long and tenured career, jokes. So I don't think I ever hit like a profound moment in such, but it's more of a mature realization of how diversity should be celebrated, not just tolerated, but the differences can actually enhance people and bring about different perspectives and really get to know each other on a more human level rather than seeing each other as an other or a stereotype. And I think also what Honey said about being seen as other, especially in the era of COVID with my experience in the UK, I have to say it was slightly exacerbated. Definitely. But I think once you get the opportunity to see what it's like being an other, you naturally have the empathetic want to understand people more, to understand, the different backgrounds and what differences and how they've lived their life essentially. And it goes back to the point of intersectionality, which Ollie briefly touched on with the experience in Abu Dhabi. So looking at how all of them intersect and how the social and cultural norms all play a part with each other was something that I started to truly realize was important to start to look into. But yeah, no profound moment, but just a creeping realization of it.
Well, yeah, I think, yeah, for me too, I think I relate more to you. Perhaps it's because, I don't know, maybe we were just blind to it before. Until now, which is, I guess, it's not right or wrong when you realize it also, as long as you realize it, right? And you want to address it and make things better for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it goes back to the culture of inclusion, right? Once we have the platform for people to speak and hear about each other, then it becomes a lot more better.
Yeah. I think, okay, before we move on to the next question, though, I think that word that you used, platform, I think making sure that there is a platform for people to voice things out to begin with, that's important, because you need that safe space for people to bring up certain things. If you don't have that, then especially in Malaysia, right, where people are a bit more, we don't want to offend, we're more polite, and because we're polite in that sense, we tend to stray away from bringing things up that might stir a bit of not controversy, but a bit of a conversation that we may not be comfortable with. Yeah. So yeah, I think having that platform is important for Malaysians at least. Yeah. Okay. My next question is more specific for Ollie. Axiata recently, we joined the 30% Club Malaysia, to which we pledged to leverage off our experience and reach to foster a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive board and management team, more specifically in regards to gender diversity. Would you like to share a lot more with us on that?
Absolutely. It was such a moment of pride for me. It's like I've worked with Dato' Izzadin, our president and group CEO, before in a previous organization, and he supported me in that organization. And I said this round, why do I just want to do for Axiata Group? We have 6 entities in Malaysia, and the critical success factor in driving DEI includes commitment from leadership. So can I have these conversations with all the CEOs in Axiata and his group of companies, right? So I was so thrilled that we had Celcom come in, we had E.co, we have ADS, ADA, and Boost. So, okay, so that's my tone from the top. How do we take the cadence down, right? Mm-hmm. So our commitment to diversity and inclusion will actually cover many aspects. And I think you remember under Axiata's People First Always charter, gender equality was called out because we're good in terms of nationalities and ethnicities. We have more than 40 across the group. And I think even in generations, look at these two, and including yourself, you know, these millennials and Gen Zs coming into our organization. But when you look at the gender representation, it's not enough. Is it the industry that makes it challenging? Is it the industry, like I was talking just now, did not make the process? So for me, 30% Club is the first articulation of a consistent articulation and commitment from leadership. My aspiration actually is from there is to then drive programs, and maybe we can speak later, or unless you want me to do it right now, is how do we really embed it beyond this? So that's one element I got the tone from the top. The principles of implementation that we're going to use for Axiata is actually fourfold. One is commitment of leadership. And the leadership I'm talking about has 3 tracks. One is the top management, the next level, right? The next level is also about the informal leaders. Because you know these days, leadership is not about who sits at the top, but our circles of influence. That is really getting my change agents in the system. So that's the leadership. And for us also, we have to acknowledge that our leadership is also includes board, right? And our board was named as the most diverse, and that was not just gender, but so therefore at the top level, we have the board, we have the top management, and now is to look into the tracks of how do we get commitment from the other leaders to drive. This is not saying that the rest of the population is not important, it is, but we need to see how we go. And the next level is actually identifying what is it that we want to implement. So those are the programs and everything else, you know. And the next level is how do we want to measure it? Which of the metrics that brings impact? If the next time I talk to, you know, Yuzan, Hani, and Adam, this is, oh, I can feel the impact of an implementation of a wider gender diversity, because critical to our gender diversity agenda is actually our male allies, and which is why, you know, in Axiata, we launched Women of Axiata and Male Allies, because I wanted to really say that the ecosystem of both genders is highly important. You know, so that is a little bit of on the gender side. And what we are also doing is we are also being trained under the Women Empowerment Principles. And that is actually a framework that is by a UN Compact and UN Women UN. So, you know, it's very systematic. I want to take the fluff out of these things called DEI, because it impacts the you know, the employee engagement and satisfaction, but it will also impact business. You know, I think like the quotes, the statistics that Adam has used, you know, McKinsey also said that, you know, if we have diversity, almost 35% of you will get almost 35% more in terms of profitability. And then, you know, we know that we are here for a purpose, right? There is the commercial as well as the national and societal obligations and ambitions that we have. So how do we blend all this together? So for me, that 30% Club was the first. I put my stick on the ground. This is what I want to do. I want to become a signatory to the Women Empowerment Principles because it brings and embeds into the way that we do. And then we can say that, okay, you know, as a company, we're proud to give this value proposition to our people. So that's why it was very important, Adam, to get such an alliance, to have 6 CEOs says, okay, Ollie, I'm with you on this journey. And that's very powerful. But now comes the fact is, okay, I need to deliver. And that's where I'll need the partners, you know, within and actually outside as well. So, you know, to give a galvanizing impact, it is always good to partner with advocacy groups outside. So we have 30% Club of Malaysia. We work with lead women. I like engaging with organizations like Graduan and other, you know, youth or gender-based advocacy groups, because together we make an impact. not only to the organization, but to the society and the ecosystem that we operate within.
Which is fair, I think, because at the end of the day, okay, I'm trying to rephrase this, but at the end of the day, I guess as human beings ourselves, right, we're meant to, we're meant to be of positive benefit to, well, the general population as a whole. We're not meant to just, talk about DEI and benefit the employees, right? Our purpose is, in a sense, our purpose really is advancing Asia, and it's beyond just our, lives within the organization. To your question, to your statement just now, though, we got Yuzen and Hani had a question yesterday, so that they sent to us. Their question was, okay, right now we're pledging to the likes of the 30% Club, Malaysia, so on and so forth, and we really wanted to accomplish things with stakeholders, be it internally or externally. Their question was, what would the perceived challenges be, and how can we address it together? And I think when they sit together, they also were coming from the point of how can we, the younger generation in the organization, be a part of it, an active contributor. Yeah. Hani and Yujen, correct me if I misquoted your question.
No, I think it's pretty much that. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam.
Adam, when we have in Axiata in our diversity program, right? So,
yep.
And I think you hear about perhaps the vision that how we want to drive DEI. So firstly we say, what are the scope of diversity and the ways that people differ, the first way that we talk, and there are many things that we can do in that space. So let's say where we focus, because when we focus, we get results and then we can expand. So the first one we want to focus is, we've talked about gender to include, but the other thing that has not been spoken about is about the diversity of generations. And I would always like to say that in the workforce, we have 6 generations, right? So we go to the Zenders, we go to the millennials, we go to the Gen Xers, and we go to the boomers. And like I said, the board plays an important role, and depending on which age the board members are, there's 2 generations of the traditionalists there, right? So my focus on that is actually harnessing the power of a multi-generational workforce. So, at least in Axiata Group, that our group chief risk officer is a millennial. So his thoughts are going to be different. The way he challenges management is different. So, and a boomer on this side, like saying, is he being rude? Actually, it's not. And you all know that all of you speak your mind, right? And that's what I love about it. And I think this goes back to a little bit about what, Adam, you said, that as Malaysians, we're very polite, but what the younger generations has brought about is a level of confidence. And, and Dr. Izzadin will always say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Mm-hmm. So if we overlay our culture of politeness with our confidence of youth, think how powerful it would be on putting your professional and your personal agenda. So the challenges that I have is, first you segment who are the people in your organization. As in all things in change transformation, it takes time. As in all things, there's going to be 20% who's going to say, oh my God, all you're talking nonsense, right? So it's okay. I may never be able to change their perception. But I think 80% want to do good, because I think any biases that stems from diversity is not malicious. It is generally truly unconscious. And if you can link that the change behavior brings a better work-life behavior and also business results, I think people will adopt. I think sometimes when we drive diversity programs, it's done like, okay, this is a women's program. It's not. So what we are building, for example, into, when we want to increase people managers' capability, I'm not just going to give you a training about unconscious bias. The elevation of our people managers is how do you coach the younger generations who like conversation and not to be dictated to? How do you ensure that your language is inclusive? And our charter under the DEI in Axiata is to build an inclusive culture, and it covers all. There's a lot of challenges. Culture takes time and people may get impatient. And I believe an inclusive culture doesn't mean that you operate in just cool offices. I do think cool offices sort of sparks joy into your life, like, oh, I love this place, but it really comes into the way we think and the way we behave. So the challenges is we not to get distracted or detracted by the naysayers to understand, and it's still, and in our organization where it's different operating companies, the stage of progression may not be the same in terms of adopting and incorporating DEI into our organization. So especially if the management trainees are rotating, do you have the same experience of the inclusive culture from one entity to another? Because I don't think that the younger generations now that are actually the majority of the workforce are going to tolerate anything that is less than an inclusive culture, that is less than understanding that sustainability is part of the equation, and also if total well-being is not incorporated. So when you ask me about the challenges, to me it's more the naysayers. Money I can beg from my boss maybe, because you do need self-funding for programs, you can't live on love and sunshine alone. So to me, those are the challenges, but challenges, guess what, gives you creativity. How are we going to overcome this? And some things can never happen. And you just have to say, okay, this one I can't do, and be honest with ourselves. And the last part, actually, what I wanted to say is that, when we talk about inclusion, that's very important. And I think, Hani, you touched about it. That is inclusion, when you have a sense of belonging. DEI, you can bring all this, say 50% women, 50% men, but they have no voice in decision making. They don't feel that they belong. They feel that I sit at the edge of the table, or perhaps, and I know Adam and Yuzen doesn't do, or when they need coffee, they will look to a woman first. I'm like, seriously? You have legs too, right? Go walk and get coffee yourself, right? So it's one of those things that, we must be very conscious about. And I think that the younger generation can help by ensuring that you walk the talk, and also politely calling out sexist comments, things like that, because you know what, it's not funny, some of those jokes, whether it be against race or against gender. And you don't have to be rude and you say, well, it doesn't meet my taste of humor or something like that. I may want to bash the person's face, but that's going to get me into trouble, right? But channel the anger or the offense into something that you can perhaps have a conversation.
Okay, I guess to build on to that, right? I think just to pick on the naysayers bit, because of course with any new thing that's introduced within an organization or in society in general, there will be pushback, right? And I think sometimes it's, at least for me, from my perspective, I think people are just resistant to change, or they're just skeptical about it. And I do know, or I have had some conversations with some individuals who just say that, who just dismiss things to do with diversity, equity, or inclusion as something that the branding department conjured up. And it's just another brand exercise to put the organization in a positive light. What do the three of you have to say about that? Because at the end of the day, it is an important thing that we're addressing, but we have skeptics and naysayers and people that just don't want to change, maybe. Yeah. Maybe Eugen. Yeah, Eugen.
Yuzen, you want to go first?
Take
No,
it
go
up.
ahead.
Sure. But young at heart.
Young at heart.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, of course you're skeptics when it comes to any sort of change. There's always going to be resistance, and I think the key thing is to show them how far we've progressed. When we show them the actual numbers, when we show them the actual, say, the benchmark from a year ago, these are the initiatives that launched, these are the amount of people that have impacted. And once they see that there is a change, and that change is actually impacting people within the organization, then they realize that, okay, it's not just say, like, there is action being implemented. There is a lot of things going on. But also, other than that, it's also just getting to know the people within the organization.
Yes.
So if they just talk to anyone within the organization, if the company doesn't truly believe in it, I'm just doing it for branding purposes, the employees will tell you. They're not gonna defend the organization or anything. So once you get to know the people within the employees, and if they truly believe in it, they'll let you know. So I think it's hard to argue against them, but the best you can do is just present the best sides of the organization and let them decide for themselves, because I think the numbers will speak for themselves and the impact and the people. But yeah.
Cool. So I guess it's more so of, if I rephrase that, it's more so of showing them through our actions, not so much of telling them
Yes.
what is. Cool. Honey, the next young person.
Yeah, I'm pretty aligned with what Yuzhen said. I think it's quite straightforward. As long as you show like the results, then it would speak for themselves. But I also think in terms of like the branding part, I think it does, like when you position yourself as a company who prioritizes on diversity, DEI in general, it does attract talents that is attracted to that ideal. So in a way, I don't think it's bad, because like once you position yourself like that, then it would ultimately just pull in people from like people who don't, people who fit into your culture or like your company culture. So I don't think that's bad. Like I think if the naysayers want to say anything, just talk to them points like Yuzhen said. So nothing more to add from me.
I think if I may add, it's like we pride ourselves in being data-driven company, right? So I think we have to begin to track the right metrics. And under what we are doing now is making sure that we are tracking the right metrics. And at least these days, organizations are doing pulse surveys. I know we have not really moved to that in Axiata, but that's another thing. You can't wait until the end of the year and find out how happy or unhappy our staff are, right? Because particularly this pandemic has really shown that you need to have more pulse surveys to get the sentiments of our workforce as things changes. So I think those, to the naysayers, I think we have to have very good communication, be transparent in some of the things, and some hardcore naysayers will remain. But I think for some who just wants to have what's the value to the organization? But like I said, these days, increasing literature is saying it's just beyond the financial values, but there are some other values that brings about. And another thing that you will hear these days is, only this is the pandemic, we got so many issues. I don't have time to do DEI, right? And I'm saying it's not another initiative. It is part of the workforce that we are doing anyways. It is business as usual, but who is delivering this business? We have not gone to all robots. We're still getting people, we're still developing people. So it is embedded to me in the new ways of working. I think when people say, I'm too busy with the pandemic, I think we are not equating the process part of diversity, like what I was talking earlier. They're just saying that we'll have to do a special drive. And I think Hani is quite right. The branding matters because, I mean, Adam, you and I have been in many things recently, right? So I think there is what I call now very responsible and ethical promotion of an organization. Mm-hmm. So the branding that we do should really reflect. And the bigger thing of naysayers is to have role models in the organization. That really, really, I think, encapsulates the title today of walking the talk. That we have leaders that say, this is important for me. And then we have what I call the change agents within the organization that says, this is why it's important. It's not something that just the bosses should say. because there are many other things that bosses are not involved. It impacts the daily works, and therefore I really value change agents within the system that talks the language and does the act that is really of inclusive culture and behavior.
Sure. Thanks, Oli. I think you touched on a very poignant point just now, which is, I think, a lot of people, what comes to mind when we say new ways of working, it's being at home, working from home in front of your laptop and taking in video calls, video meetings, one after the other. I think that's what people think of when we say new ways of working. But yeah, you rightfully pointed out just now, what we don't realize is new ways of working also is in regards to the diversity side of things. And it's, we pride ourselves with the tagline "People First Always," and rightfully, like you mentioned just now, "People First Always" means that you need to take care of your people first before anything, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that are delivering results for the organization. If they are not content with the way things are done, and that's I'm talking about it in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion again. If they don't feel it, most importantly, included, chances are they won't deliver for the organization. Yeah, just thought that was a really important point. Before we jump to the Q&A session with the audience members, though, there is one last question that I guess I would like to pose to three of you. So far, our conversation has revolved around diversity, equity, and inclusion, specific to gender diversity, as well as, to an extent, generational diversity. These are the two main things that we are actively looking into. But I guess beyond these two things, what are the other aspects of DEI that Axiata would be looking into? Or for Hani and Eugen, what would you ideally aspire Axiata to look into also?
Better the answer first.
You said you want to answer first?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. All right. I think I really like what Oli said about the process and making sure that we support people, basically providing access and opportunity for people to actually come into the organization itself. I think that is the first step. So I think something that is close to my heart, I think it's I would say regarding the recruitment process, basically evaluating people from like different socioeconomic statuses, because I feel like you can see like people's CV and then they have a lot of achievements, but what we don't see is like the background. Maybe this person has not achieved as much because maybe they're taking care of like their sick parents at home, or they don't have the access for example, like tuition classes. Their parents cannot afford to do that. So I think that is important, because otherwise I feel like we live, it would be hard to avoid living in a bubble, because we are attracting the same kind of people, and our platforms only reach a certain kind of people. So this restricts, I would say, in some way, diversity. So I think the equity and access and opportunity for like different facets of the Malaysian, not just Malaysian community, like across all Axiata markets, is quite key. Yeah, so happy for you, Zen, to add on.
I think Hani and Oli were completely right in that if we are just very insular in the community, we would just be an echo chamber. So bringing that different perspectives in is definitely important. And I think one aspect of DEI that we have to realize that it is an evolving discussion. It's not that once we hit this goal, it's set. We're good for life. And the fact is, once we start bringing other people in, we start hearing more of their opinions, and we start to realize how they aren't being represented well. So having that evolving nature it shows how important that there's a platform for these people to raise their opinions, to be able to safely, without fear of being judged, bring in their concerns and really let them know how they can best operate within the working environment. So yeah, I think just supporting what Hani and Ollie has said, exactly what they've said so far.
Cool. Thanks, Susan. And Ollie.
So Adam, you and I are going to deliver against these wishes, right? So, for Axiata, what we want to do in terms of where we want to have focused actions is actually on four lanes, if I will, and then I'll go the horizontal and the vertical. So we want to go on what we talk already about gender, and there's enough discussions on that. I've touched about generations, and in ethnicities, we are also have more than 41 nationalities, right? But do we integrate enough? So that's a different conversation, right? Do we understand enough what our colleagues in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka do, apart from just wishing them the festival things? So there are things that we could do. And the other one is about abilities. And I think clearly during these pandemic times, it has exposed more people with different abilities. And I think they can also still contribute, whether it's a physical ability or something else. How do we handle it? So that's the four vertical streams that we have here. And on the horizontal, the vertical streams is we talked a lot about leadership. So that one we addressed. The other one is workplace. Workplace is, whatever Hani and Yuzan has been talking about access to bring people. And under our Axiata Cares, giving psychological safety is one of the main drivers. We may not have gone yet in the implementation, but apart from physical space safety, we want to go to psychological space. So that's under workspace. I think that is sometimes quite easy to do, but we're also going to extend and understand marketplace diversity. Does our procurement process and policies and philosophy also who we partner, about our branding and marketing? How does it reflect in our collaterals, in our products, in our services? So that's really going from workplace to marketplace. And the last one is the communities, because I think this is so key these days that we never operate in isolation. So I think those are our four vertical focus, regardless of what the horizontal streams will be. And then we identify what are the programs we want to make an impact. Now, from the other side, on the traits that we want to build that will form a little bit into the behaviors, is building the inclusive culture in terms of behavior and language. Some simple, people say, oh, it's a simple training, but when you click and then this, like, say, good morning, guys, there were other things that I learned when I did that training in that organization. I'm like, oops. And I consider myself a person who truly supports inclusive culture. And at one of the conversations, webinars I gave, people says, I'm not biased. The reality of it, all of us are biased. My say is, if you're going to be biased, be positively biased. Therefore, be biased for the right things, right? It's very difficult to be super neutral, because then where does your passion lean? Oh, okay, some things I may be neutral. I mean, even the Euro Cup, I'm not neutral, okay? So I may not be a sports person. So you've always got an opinion one way or another, right? So you are going to be biased. You might as well be positively biased. So I think in Axiata those are the four horizontals we want to go against the four verticals. But we must understand that I'm also overlaying it with diversity of thought, diversity of life experiences, because that's what's happening to us right now. So I may have, and I think that's the point that you brought up, the intersectionality has gotten more complex. Because if you overlay with diversity of thought, diversity of life experiences, Hani, you referred to it, perhaps those, how do we include digital inclusion? Those kind of things matters. So the complexity of DEI can be quite high, but how do you then manage step by step? And I think that's where, for me, it's always, it's not how big or how grand a program that we run, is what is the impact to the internal stakeholders and that I serve, which is all of you, and the external stakeholders that we serve, be it our customers and the community that we're part of. So that is where I think, Adam, our ecosystem and influence on this 4x4 that comes to my head, how we're going to deliver Axiata's positions on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, it sounds like we have a lot on our plate. I mean, there's a lot for us to be excited to deliver about in the coming months.
So you see, there'll be so many challenges. There's so many that Hani and Yuzan and Adam have volunteered to be part of.
Glad to be part of it. Okay, cool. Okay, we are, well, for the past hour, there's been a lot of questions pinging in. I've summarized a few of it. I think one of the consistent one that pops up is when it comes to diversity, right? Say you want to advocate for diversity, but the people around you they're unaware of it still, or they just choose to dismiss it. The question that we've received is, how may I know how would you advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion with colleagues who might not understand its importance or even want to have that conversation in the first place?
I think that question has for me at least, has an answer itself, is to create the awareness. And I may be talking about 10 steps ahead, being that I'm operating in quite an informed environment. But I do remember in an earlier organization, I had to do a lot of work on awareness. And awareness comes in various forms. Some are the very formal one. And when I wanted to reach the change makers, I actually, in my head, figure out who influences that person, and then have that person that they will listen to in that conversation, And I think these days, I think small groups are the best. When you call it focus group, it sounds so corporate. It's not meant to be. But when you have a chill session, sometimes to have that kind of infuse some serious topic. I do think DEI is a serious topic and not a fluff topic. So it's just, what do you think about it? And even if the person say, oh my God, is it another woman's agenda? And the next question is, why do you say it's another woman's agenda? I have a wife, I have a girlfriend, I have my mother. Why do you think it's just a woman's agenda and it's not just the words, sometimes it's the derogatory tone, right? So when you want to build awareness, you mustn't be, feel sometimes disheartened when somebody comes with less than an immediate conversion. Because you think that you have a conversation, or they listen, they're going to be converted. Hardly. You're going to do things, and then you have to have a persistent power, and then say, okay, but awareness is absolutely necessary. We should have spoken about it earlier.
It's like, I guess, in a sense, to the individuals that asked this question, it's kind of like doing PR work or other marketing work, where you're slowly in a sense like, dropping bits of bread for people to follow you and change their behavior slowly. If I can put it that way, would that be a fair, simplistic explanation?
It is, a simple is easy, or we call it the nudge. You nudge the person to perhaps change, either in behavior and language. But you're right. And then you get the person, and then sometimes, and I tell you, sometimes they become the best advocate because they were so against it. And then when they have that aha moment, it's like, okay, all is not talking nonsense. They become then my best supporter for some of the programs that we run in the various organizations I've been with.
Yeah, I think, people just need that light bulb moment.
Yes.
And Hani, Yuzan, would you have anything to add?
Sure. So I think what what Ali said about having you speak in an informal session, getting to know one another. Once you build that interpersonal relationship, I think people are naturally more open to what you want to say. But I think also Ali previously mentioned about learning to speak their language. So if the metrics they see are, with regards to the performance of the company, if you let them talk about it through that lens, and then slowly talk about the general DEI initiatives. I think once they start seeing it through that lens, they can start seeing it through your lens as well. So having that sort of transition, I think, is quite important. I think Ollie just hit it right on the nail. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add. I think it's just like Orly and Izan said, it's basically how you approach the person. Like once you know the person, then you can I would say adjust how you communicate with the person, and also like just walk the talk. Once the person sees you bringing like actionable concrete actions to the table, and then they see that you're making like a difference, then I think the person would be open to have that conversation with you. So
Adam, I just wanted to add one thing. Sometimes when there is an unconscious bias that comes up, and then and I'm going to use a woman because, honey, you and I can relate to this. Oh my God, this women are so emotional. And then this, but not you, not talking about you. And I'm like saying, but I'm a woman. And you know what? I am emotional. I am emotional when the circumstance allow me to be emotional. And I'm very calm when it's not. But you often hear that conversations, right? When somebody's being this for some reason, but you're not, I'm like saying, okay, but I'm a woman, So, and of course there are women who are not, who are very calm. I wouldn't describe myself as calm. But when you're saying something, you say, but not you, then it's like, so therefore it shows where the mental precept is. But that's what I'm trying to say. What you say and where your mind orientation is hasn't sort of harmonized, and you're being polite in the conversation or in the group.
Yeah.
It's okay, you can say, but not you. But I'm just saying that.
No. I wanted to just add that some people do say that statement, but at the same time, whenever I hear that, right, it's like at the back of my head, apart from what you just mentioned, it's also, I think men are also quite emotional. And it's just that, like, yeah, men are also emotional, but why just because you're a man, you're not gonna it's like,
out.
Yeah, you're not gonna call yourself out, but it's wrong. It's like, I guess
tackling there.
Yeah, I guess quote unquote, it's like, they control macho, which in the context of again, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a behavior that I think we need to address, because it can be toxic. Definitely. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Next question. I think this question is more specific for Ollie and Hani first and foremost, and I guess Eugen, you can add in or chime in later as a male ally to it. But this question is from Rivka. So it reads as, first of all, I really love the topic today and also adore how Axiata supports female employees in the corporate world. But how do you describe the work environment in Axiata when it comes to supporting female women to lead organizations, to lead departments in the organization? What's the ecosystem that's being put in place, I suppose?
Honey, give the young perspective first, young woman.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I think my Wi-Fi was really bad. Could you repeat that question? Sorry.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll read it from the start, okay? Question is, first of all, I really love the topic of today, and I adore how Axiata supports female employees in the corporate world. But how would you describe the work environment within Axiata when it comes to empowering women employees to take up leadership roles?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Okay. I think so. This is my perspective. I think first of all, as a fresh grad coming into like an organization, the first thing that you look at would be the role models. So people like Ollie, like Fernie, I feel once you see that there are role models, female role models in the board, in the top management, and which Axiata has, and is very advocaatly pushing for it, you sort of feel very empowered to speak up and voice out your opinions. I'm not sure if this is the same for anyone else, but that's just my perspective. Because we, as people, I think we tend to look up to we tend to want to look up to people, especially like younger people. We want to take example from people that we admire. So once we can see that, then we're like, okay, this person has achieved this. I know that I am also capable of achieving this. But if you can't see those people at the top, then you're just like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. It's just like an unconscious. I'm not sure if this is for females only. I'm not sure if men go through the same thing as well. But that, I think, is more of like a personal perspective from my side. So yeah, which I think Axiata is really pushing forwards on that, and I really admire Oli also and everyone else for like advocating for gender equity. Yeah. So Oli, please, you can elaborate so much more.
No, not at all. I think, you know, they say that the perception is the reality, and I'm at least delighted that you're able to name some female role models. So I think when we called out gender diversity as an active program for Axiata, it is a very empowering organization. But what we need to make sure is the pool of women in the organization given the same access to ascend into leadership? Are the development programs, whether it be in the technology or in the network, as equally empowering as it is to go up the ranks in the more what we call enabling divisions of HR, finance, right? So I think what I would say is that right now in Axiata, when you have the capability and you have to have the confidence, you will get ahead. And I think there is equal opportunity. I think what we need to do, and we're constantly trying to up the game, is to give enough access such that, you know, at the end of the day, we are still governed by merit for any role. But, you know, that's the other thing that I wanted to also say. When a woman is appointed or at any levels, there's a question that somebody will say, but make sure it's based on merit. Will that question come up if it's a man?
Oh.
Very much less so, you know? So I politely held back, but I'm beginning to ask, would you pose the same question if it is a man is appointed? So I think when in earlier part, and this may now have moved on, women don't like to be taken into any appointment as tokenism. And I think that's the biggest thing. And tokenism can come either because it's gender or because, you know, I want to show how I appreciate the young people. So I'm going to put a very young person to the management team, right? So it's more like if I'm looking for a role, who are my candidates? Who are my the employees in the organization? So I would say today, Axiata does have an empowering organization for women. And as all things, we want to be better, and we want to lead the pack. That in our industry, we are actually could exemplify what D&I is best embedded, and it's still a journey for us.
Yeah, nicely said. Thanks, Oli and Hani. I think Yushan, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, a little bit actually. So I can't say from a woman's perspective, of course. But what I can say is in my second rotation, I had a boss that I really looked up to, and she was a woman. And throughout the entire rotation, she really mentored me and really, well, we had personal development sessions that really taught me a lot about her experiences and all. So just having that visibility of her being the HOD and being able to have that much impact on the organization just really shows me that, you know, Axiata does really have it in place. They really do allow capable people to really rise, and having that equal access to everyone. So yeah, I think just from my observations, that's definitely the case.
Yeah, I think, yeah, to add to what the three of you have already said, right? I think I know I'm the moderator, but I just thought I'd chime in a bit here. Even for me, right? I mean, to Rivka's question, when it comes to diversity at Axiata Group, I've been with Axiata for I think about 6 years now, and it is one of the most diverse organizations in this country that you could be a part of, and that's in the context of gender diversity. That's also in the context of ethnicities, and also in the context of generational diversity. I mean, we are present across multiple countries across the region, and because we are present in other markets also, we have representatives from all of the other markets here at Corporate Center in KL. So by having this nice mix of individuals from different backgrounds, again, in the context of gender, age, ethnicity, and also in the context of field of studies and expertise, because we have all of this nice, in a sense, like a melting pot at Axiata Group Corporate Center. The perspectives that comes in, the ideas that pop up, it's fresh and it's interesting, and you want to, I mean, as an Axiata family member, if I can put it that way, it does make life at Axiata interesting, because there are new things every day, and people support each other regardless of the diverse background. Yeah. Okay, that was me adding in. Before we end the session, there's one last question that I would like to pose to all three of you. Okay, granted, we are at a career fair. We're at the Graduate Aspire Career Fair. What would your parting advice be to the job seekers here when it comes to applying or looking for an organization that they might want to work for? What are the elements of diversity, equity, and inclusion that you would advise them to look out for, so that they may have, a fruitful career, if I can put it that way, moving forward in the future?
Let me start this time. My advice to you is, as always, go forward with confidence. And if you're looking for an organization that exemplifies the right DEI, what you want, apart from just doing research on Google or whatever it is, I would suggest you talk to the members of the organization, because you will see DEI embedded in the culture. And I know people say, oh, culture is nebulous, but it's not. Adam has just given us a resounding testimony on why you'd want to be part of Axiata. And I think those are the people that you should look out to hear some affirmations. And also be prepared to also, somebody says, oh no, I hate that organization. You can never speak up. It's a very hierarchical. It's also good, just do a little bit of homework. If you have, of course, the luxury of option, because I know as job seekers, sometimes, there's some compromises that you have to make. But I also think that as if you have that luxury of being able to choose, it's always good to be working with an organization where your values, your personal values, is aligned with the organizational values, whether it just be DEI and everything else. I mean, for me, and no matter what age I've been, I have stayed with organizations because they really embody the values that resonate with me. And I have walked away from organizations despite the money or whatever it is, because it is not what I want to be in my daily life. So, over time, you will have courage and the ability to choose a bit more, but always have a dynamic evaluation of what matters to you as a person. And I wish you all the very best of luck.
Thanks, Oli. Yujan, Hani, over to you.
Yeah, go first, or shall I?
Yuzen, why do you do this?
I don't mind either way.
All right, I'm just gonna quickly chime in. I think what Oli said is very on point. Talk to the people. That's what I did when I was job seeking last year as well. But I also think when you apply for the job as well, like during the interview session, you can see how the interview conducts it. You can see what kind of candidates that are present in the session. So if you vibe with the candidates in that particular session, I'm pretty sure you would vibe with the company as a whole. So that's why I enjoy my Axiata interviews. So I'm like, I can fit in with these people and I can work with them. And even though we're we have different backgrounds, but the values are similar. So yeah, I think just go for all interviews and just figure out what works best for you, and then just go for it.
Keyword vibe.
The millennial word, sorry.
Yeah.
Hashtag vibes, is it?
But honestly, I think there's a reason why for a lot of the AGP batch 11, we really enjoy each other's company. We have this chat group where we text constantly. And so getting that vibe is actually really important, just putting it out there. But I think, I just really want to echo what Ollie and Hani said, and also what Hani said when it comes to branding and how it attracts the right type of people. You need to know whether the DI values really align with your own, because I'm guilty of this in the past, where I was younger, I was just look at the salary, and that's it. But the matter of the fact is, it's not sustainable if you just go for the monetary value. If you work in an environment that does not align with your values, in the long term, you'll burn out, you start to hate everything, and I think it's not sustainable. So having to find an organization that really aligns with your values is extraordinarily important, and having the leaders to look up to with that. But also going to Hani's points about interviews, one thing we should realize about interviews is not a one-sided thing. You should also ask the tough questions to them.
Yeah.
Really grill them, go for it. If you see a negative Glassdoor review, okay, phrase it in a manner that's nice, but grill them about aspects of that the organization has been negative about, and see whether the tough questions align with the values. Because when you ask the tough questions, naturally that's when you see what their values actually are. So yeah, just grill the interviewers back, just do a Uno reverse card.
Thank God I didn't interview you, Yuzen.
Yeah, I think that's important. That's one of the most important things also, though. I think to Yuzen's point, right? When I think you will be able to vouch for this because you were volunteering for the UKAC Career Fair. I think it's always nice to get questions from the person that you are conversing with also. It's because, okay, to the attendees listening in here, when you meet us later on at the Axiata virtual booth, it's not so much of us it's not so much of us, the Axiata representatives, telling you what you can expect from Axiata, but it's also us wanting to hear from you, like what are you interested? Mainly what are you interested in? What drives you as an individual? And would you vibe with us? Hashtag vibe, as Hani put it just now. Yeah.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah. So okay, it is 11:25 now. Again, thanks very much, Norlida, Hani, Eugen, for being a part of this conversation on walking the talk on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace with us here today. Again, thanks very much. It's been an interesting topic that we've touched on. We would now be passing the stage back to Wafi from Grad 1. Over to you, Wafi.
Right. Thank you, Axiata, for that insightful session and for shedding light on that topic. I really did agree with the bit Ollie mentioned about calling out sexual or racial jokes at the workplace. I think it's really important for people to know that it's not just enough for us to know that something is wrong, but to call it out when we come across it or when we see it at the workplace. So if you'd like to be part of an organization, that values diversity and inclusion, you can discover the different career opportunities available at Axiata by visiting their virtual booth here at Grad 1 Aspire. And don't forget to vote for them as Malaysia's most preferred employer. You can vote for them at the virtual booth. To the audience members that had their questions answered live during the webinar, Team Grad 1 will be in touch with you on your Shopee vouchers. Once again, thank you to our panel and have a good